Curious minds, buckle up because we're about to take the UAP conversation to a whole new level. We're diving deep into what they don't want you to know.
I'm going to give you a report on drones about 1 day into the administration.
We're on a mission to explore the unknown, to challenge the mainstream, and uncover what's really happening with UAPs.
From shocking revelations to government disclosures, we're bringing you the facts you won't hear anywhere else.
If we can't discuss this big subject openly, how will we ever uncover the truth behind these incidents? What do you think about the latest UAP revelations?
There's a lot of noise out there, but we're here to cut through it and get to the truth.
Right now on Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks.
It seems that lately, news around the UAP subject, including the still persistent drone sightings happening here in the US and elsewhere, are changing by the day. Whatever is really happening, it just refuses to let up. That would also include the lack of information or disinformation the public is being fed about the drones and other sky anomalies for that matter. Here's the latest, fresh from the White House, where newly installed Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt conveyed the following, supposedly directly from President Trump. And I quote, "After research and study, the drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons. Many of these drones were also hobbyist, recreational, and private individuals that enjoy flying drones. In time, it got worse due to curiosity. This is not the enemy," end quote. Well, there you have it, the official word that everyone has been clamoring for weeks. All I can say is really, let's get real. So look, this is the reason why my co-host Steve Mera and I have decided to really lean into the UAP subject with the kickoff of our new series that you're about to see and hear, UAP and Beyond. The lies and the secrets behind this subject have and continue to go way beyond the pale, and it's got to stop. Just after we wrapped recording this premiere episode, the announcement about the drones was released from the White House. My initial thought was, would this render at least part of our conversation that Steve and I had during our recording irrelevant, stale news? And then I thought, not at all. In fact, to the contrary, because not only does this latest limited hangout piece of news make all that we had to say quite relevant, it actually underscored to me why independent journalism, commentary, and most importantly, your voice on these subjects is more important than ever. Frankly, it's all that really matters. Now, I would imagine there will be a fair share of public fallout from this incredibly shallow and frankly condescending statement from the White House in the days to come. That is until the next shoe drops in the form of the latest breaking news around this subject or something else. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I have a feeling it won't take long. But in the meantime, enjoy this, the premiere episode of our brand new series, UAP and Beyond. Let's do this. Well, welcome everyone to a new experience for me, and I hope for you too, and an exciting one. Welcome to UAP and Beyond at long last. I am doing this fabulous, and I'm going to call it fabulous up front because we got a lot to talk about in the UAP world, y'all. So much so that I couldn't do it alone. I have brought along my co-host, who I'm so delighted, frequent guest, now co-host for UAP and Beyond, Mr. Steve Mera from the UK. Steve, a hearty welcome. And this is your show too. So you may want to say something to the audience before we get started.
Thank you for having me. It's a wonderful idea because, we're talking about a phenomenon that's global, and recent things that have been taking place is not just been happening in the US, it's happening in the UK and a number of other countries. So, it's good to get a good collective information together because see people are reporting all the same thing here.
Absolutely. Well, when you and I started talking about kind of playing around with this concept of doing a co-hosted series, I really didn't have to think that long and hard about it because of all that has come out. And even in the last less than a year, and it seems like we're reaching fast a crescendo of something. What that something is, I don't know. But as y'all know, and I'm talking to the audience, NewsNation, I'm going to call them by name. I don't know what to think of. I'm always a bit dubious when I see a mainstream outlet covering something like this so heavily. But for the time being, I'm going to say kudos to them because they're covering it end to end. We're in fact going to share some clips that we're going to use as talking points for what they've been showing of late. I'm sure many of you who are UFO, UAP buffs know what I'm talking about, not the least of which is Mr. Jacob Barber, the UFO or UAP whistleblower, who's let out a lot of information. There's been more stuff, Steve, right? Even since
Well,
then.
exactly, because I think many of our viewers and listeners will realize very quickly when we talk about the reference to UAP drones. I mean, we have a UAP, which is associated or assumed to be associated with the phenomena, and we have this drones. And of course, we know about drones because people own drones, they fly drones. But we've got something in the middle here now, which is
Mhm.
being construed to be UAP drones. And this is a whole new topical area of discussion now because we have had not hundreds, but we have had thousands of these reported incidents, not just taking place in the US, been taking place simultaneously in the UK and a number of other countries. And we have to ask one of these real important questions because I was hit by hundreds of people asking that question. Are they ours or are they them, the others, the phenomenon? And that's become a real challenging. I mean, normally it's not so challenging because you can kind of work out, well, yes, this constitutes the phenomena, but how this has been represented by the government, how it's been presented, controlled, ignored by the governments, not just the US, the UK, and many others, is problematic because we have to consider if there is a foreign agent in the sky who have these drones, an adversary, an example, why are they being ignored?
Why are they
You know,
being
and it's on a global basis as well. So that becomes very problematic, very troubling, and very difficult to ascertain what the hell is going on here.
Hey everyone. Just a quick reminder, if you're enjoying this content and you want more, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell. This tells YouTube you want to see more higher journeys, and that helps spread the word. It's one of the best ways you can support our work. Thanks so much. Now, let's get back to the show. Well, you know what? Let's get on with the clips because we got a lot to share, and we're going to do a little, I guess you call these reaction videos, right? More commentary, I think, than reaction. But let's bring in something you all may have seen in the last couple of weeks ago. We had a new president here, in a new sheriff in town, right, in this country, and we're not going to get into all the stuff going on there. But let's keep it tight to the drones. What did Trump have to say a few days ago, or about a week or so ago? Let's watch this.
Report on drones about 1 day into the administration, because I think it's ridiculous that they're not telling you about what's going on with the drones. That could be us sending drones. I hope that's the case, us doing it and doing research, and maybe they don't want to talk about it from that standpoint. I hope it's not an enemy, but we're going to find out on the 21st, the day after. You have to give me a little time for the inauguration, but shortly thereafter, we'll give you a report on it. We'll tell you exactly what it is. They know, and it's very strange that they aren't talking about it.
President Trump, at some point will you use your powers of the presidency to tell Americans who are concerned about drones?
Yeah,
A few weeks
good.
ago,
Yeah.
what exactly
I will.
Can you tell us now?
In fact, I'd like to know because I just got here.
What do you think?
I just came here. I've been here for what, 15 minutes?
But is it anything of these drones? Is it anything that people need to be worried
No,
about?
I think it's terrible. I would like to find out what it is and tell the people.
And can you commit to some kind of...
In fact, I'd like to do that. Could we find out what that was, Susie? Okay? Yeah, why don't we find out? Immediately. I can't imagine it's an enemy or there would have been, people would have gotten blown up all over. Maybe they were testing things. I don't know why they wouldn't have said what it was.
Okay. Well, I'm sure many of you have seen that. So Susie would be our new chief of staff for Trump. That's Susie Wiles, first woman chief of staff in history. So that certainly is a milestone. But milestone or not. Let's see what she's going to do, Stephen. The other thing I just wanted to say is that initial clip where a lot of people saw that was covered pretty much end to end, where he promised on January 21st that he would get an answer. Well, of course, he's
Oh
got a
yeah,
few things on his plate. But that was actually at in Mar-a-Lago, I believe, at the Republican governors meeting. Actually, I
yeah.
saw my new governor in South Carolina, McMaster, sitting a couple of seats from him. Anyway, yeah.
You know,
Thoughts on that? What have you heard? You said you had a little bit of
it's
an inside scoop
intriguing.
on what's
It's
going
very
on.
intriguing about what Trump has been saying. I mean, to begin with, it initiated with Trump making a statement which was highly unusual, with him saying, "I'm aware of the drones. I know where they're coming from. I know where they're landing." So, if that is the case, you would assume that they are landing within the United States somewhere. And if that is the case, then that would point the finger to these objects are controlled and monitored and maintained by the United States government. There may be secret technology, of course, if that is the case. Now, he did say that he was going to put forward for a request for a full report on this, and it should land on his desk on January the 21st.
Hmm.
We are still waiting to hear on this at this moment in time. Now, how much information is he going to get, which is credible information for a president, of course, because our president's going to get that information if it's, it could be redacted. 95% could be redacted.
Mhm.
Meaning that is going to get entitlement. I think there's only really been 5 presidents in the United States that have had the opportunity of having more knowledge than some in regarding the subject of UFOs. And that's probably because of their workings prior to becoming president, is working in the CIA, for an example, or generals or military positions, where they would have maybe had already some previous knowledge in regarding the subject. And then obviously that door has been left open so far for them to allow to obtain further information during their presidency.
Right.
But, Trump, like a number of other people, they are elected individuals. And if this is real critical information, is it going to be given out to just elected individuals, which may not hold office in 4 years' time? I mean, we just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So it becomes very questionable if he is going to actually he'll certainly get some response, absolutely, because he's the president. But will he get as we say, the critical, nuts and bolts information that people are asking? What is it? What is in our
Right.
sky?
If this is something that A, they're well aware of, and B, is well out of the realm of what we call normal, he's not going to, I don't think he's going to get the straight scoop. But I'll tell you something. I think it was a New Jersey mayor, Michael Melham from Belleville, New Jersey, that made a statement insofar as the fact that nothing has come down the pike yet. I mean, look, he's only been in office, a week and a half. I think this is his first full week that we're kind of concluding on. But Melville said, or Melham, I'm sorry, from Belleville, it's a little bit of a tongue twister. He
Yes.
sees it as a sign that there's nothing to see here, no big deal. Otherwise, it would have come forward before now. No national security threat, nothing. I don't know if I buy that.
It simply doesn't make any sense, because
Yeah,
you've got the Pentagon and other countries the government saying to the general public, just ignore them. They're no defense significance. There's no national security risk here.
yeah.
And that maybe many people or most of the people are misidentifying normal aircraft in the sky. I mean, have you seen some of
That's
these videos?
baloney.
That is absolutely preposterous. But to ignore them, not to send a military jet out or military helicopter out to scramble these things out of the sky, is grave concern. Makes you think straight away, well, if they're happy with them over military bases, civilian airports, causing structural problems. I mean, the FAA in America, they continue to conduct their investigation. They're not happy with that response, and I don't blame them for it, because they need answers just as the general public. And now we learn, even today, that these sightings are still continuing.
Yeah, you just sent me something, because the FAA ban was lifted about mid-month, and I don't know if they ever even relented. Steve, did they? Did they ever go away? But they're certainly being seen now, right?
Well, this kind of slowed down, but now there's a footprint of them coming back again. People
Yeah.
are reporting, even when there was an alert put out that no drones, not even people that own drones to fly them, were allowed to launch them up into the sky for a duration, a period of time. There was still continued incidents taking place, so they were ignored. So we have to say, why aren't these being shot down? And if they're not, and if they are some foreign agent, and an adversary, you would expect them, they would just shoot them out of the sky, especially if they're over military bases and civilian airports and problematics. So you'd think that can't be the case. And also, these sightings took place, these incidents on UAP drones took place in multiple countries around about the same time. So how does that happen? Who can control on a global basis that the cooperation from all these various countries, if it's their own drones being put up in their skies?
Absolutely.
I can't imagine that, because sometimes we just can't see eye to eye on the simplest of things with some of these countries where they've had these things, these issues. So we have to say, are we dealing with the phenomena here, or are we dealing with both?
Well, I tend to think it's both. I've always been one to say it's never this or that straight away. It's this and that and. Um, you know, I think that there's so many confounding things about all of this. The fact that no one has said anything and refuses, and the government even refuses to our government refuses to acknowledge that they're not only happening concentrated in the Northeast. By the way, they're happening all over the country. I've heard from people in Denver, Colorado, and in California. In fact, during the fires, I actually spoke to a former producer of mine who said that she saw, just prior to the fires, she saw a swarm of drones out of her window. So the radio silence to me, Steve, to me is just underscoring the fact that they're hiding something big.
It does sound like that. I mean, I have to say that it could be a very clever ploy taking place here now. Anybody who kind of understands how psyops works, and the government are perfectly, they're well trained in this, we've been doing this for many, many years, is that if somehow some secret organization within the establishment or the government were aware that there was going to be a global presence in our skies of this UFO or UAP phenomenon, then the best way to probably deal with that, and without alerting the general public too much or worrying them, would be to put their own up there as well. And they basically say, because these things are full of lights, they're like, hey, look at me. They're not covert,
They're
because they
trying to
wouldn't
be
have
seen. Yeah, they're trying to be seen.
they want to be seen.
Yeah.
So they put theirs up in the sky as well. It's called absurdity process. And it causes real problems because people really don't know. Well, now what we're looking at something that looks like the UAP phenomenon, the UFO phenomena, and something that doesn't. It looks like something else, structured crafts. And then they generally tell the whole public, ignore them, don't worry about them, and there's no defense significance. The first thing the general public are going to turn around and think immediately, very cleverly, is, well, they must be the US owned military exotic aircraft, secret test, whatever, just like the UK would. That diffuses the fact that the real phenomenon is present in the sky as well. It takes the whole blame away very secretly. In other words, it's not just UAP in the sky. They throw them up there as well to diffuse the situation in the psyops so that people just kind of go, well, do you know what? It's got to be ours, and let's not do more about it. And this could be happening as we actually are seeing these events happen around the world.
I want to read a quote from this mayor. I'm staying on him for a minute. This New Jersey mayor. He said, "Get this, Steve, and everybody." He said that he has actually watched Mayor Melham, glowing orbs of light over Long Island that actually transform into a mechanical drone. He admitted that himself. Nothing to see here, eh? What's up with that? I mean,
Well, yeah, this is where we have this absurdity. Jacques Vallée talked about this. Our researcher, Jacques Vallée, who's been heavily involved in this subject for many years, you and I both know him, he documented this aspect many years ago about absurdity, that if even the phenomena itself can mask itself to look something a little bit more technological, and that we might actually have made it in purposely to cause this absurdity. In other words, we're just totally confused now as to what we're seeing. And that sometimes that's exactly what the phenomenon actually wants.
Let's watch another clip because we got a bunch to talk about here. I want to stage this up. As many of you know, particularly here in the U.S., Marco Rubio, who has been a fierce advocate of some form of disclosure on the UAP side, on the congressional side, has recently been confirmed as Secretary of State. And I really let's watch this little clip I was able to pull from 2023, something that he said, and let's have a little conversation about this on the back end. Let's watch this.
Will say there are people that have come forward to share information with our committee over the last couple of years. I would imagine some of them are potentially some of the same people that perhaps he's referring to. I want to be very protective of these people. A lot of these people came to us even before these protections were in the law for whistleblowers to come forward.
Okay. As he talks about these other whistleblowers, the interview was done back in June of 2023. Of course, we remember that's when Grush came forward. And I remember speaking at Contact in the Desert on the last day. That's when the big news broke, right? But you have to wonder, Steve, if one of these other high-level government whistleblowers was in fact Jake Barber, which we're really going to lean into in today's premiere show.
It's interesting when we talk about whistleblowers because we had whistleblowers in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. But the problem is that the only way they could get their word out was through late night radio shows, coast to coast. Helped out a lot with that. And putting information out in little tiny bits and bobs, little interviews, people sat in the shadows, blanked out faces, that sort of thing. We've had that in the troves for many, many years. This has been going on. However, now they have an official platform because now what we're saying is whistleblowers, people are being involved in these sensitive programs and know some incredible information, can now come forward and talk openly about some of these things they've been involved in without the worry of being
ramifications,
yeah, prison, all these different things. And the secretive thing about this is because they were generally worried about being fined and jailed and things like that, or even worse. So the fact is that now they have a platform and a safety net. They are going to come in their troves. Absolutely. This is what they've been waiting for, to be able to say what they want, because you know what? Humans, we're all the same. We're not very good at keeping secrets. Secrets are just not good. We're not good at that. We just have to tell somebody, don't we? And then we tell them, don't tell anybody, So what the thing is, it's natural human nature to want to share information. And the stress that they're under all these years of not being able to talk about this, there are going to be droves of people coming forward, more whistleblowers, and some very incredible information.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you can't help but think about, I think there have been a couple of iterations to the UAP Whistleblower Act, the latest of which was back in November of this past November. Tennessee Representative Tim Burkett made the latest amendment, which is supposed to be even more ironclad. So yes, indeed, I agree. But let's talk about Rubio. He's a Secretary of State now. It was confirmed a few days ago. Do you think it's not like this is the only thing he's got on his plate? We got a lot to deal with. He certainly will have a lot to deal with. Where do you think he's going to place this, if at all, on his priority list as Secretary of State?
Well, the public demand is high. I mean, it's surprisingly high. You'd be surprised compared to other things which are on his plate. But I wonder if he's actually going to put it under the defense banner, which he can do now because he can request certain information. Because are we talking about the defense of the country? Should we be concerned? That's one of the big questions. And if not, why? That's the big question. Why aren't we? Because that we have to point our finger as to what are the things that are flying around then? What are the things that the Nimitz and the carrier group have been witnessing for many years, the fighter pilots? And it goes back even further than that. So it can't simply brush this away under the carpet. It has to be addressed, and it's good to be addressed by people in action. And he's certainly in action. Will he obtain information? The problem is with critical information, as we've heard throughout the UAP hearings in the US, is when things start to just get very, very juicy, and you're on the edge of getting some real good information, it goes beyond into closed door conversations.
Or stiffs.
Yeah, skiffs, and it gets rubber stamped with national security. And the thing is that, well, they might know, but we need to know. The general public need to know. So it's like, is it another roundabout we've got to go around in an attempt to try and find out. And then are we going to go to those people next and say, well, you've been told you need to share this if the government aren't going to share it? It's real problematic as to what is so sensitive about this phenomena that the government cannot tell us about. And that's what's interesting.
Yeah, well, something is that I think we can conclude something is that they're deeming very sensitive, or as many have said, would give us an ontological shock. And I think for those of you that haven't seen the NewsNation, we're going to be giving you some clips in a minute with Jake Barber. He addresses that, but going back to Rubio, I mean, this really struck me hard because Rubio has been very outspoken on the UAP issue ever since they started the congressional hearings. This set of them a couple of years ago, maybe certainly a year. Um, Whatever, I'm going to call it a phenomenon for lack of a better word because we don't know. Uh, Seems to want to be seen. And yet, in the same breath, we're hearing that some of the feats that some of them are able to achieve defy physics to some extent in terms of speeds, whatever, sh- showing up and then blinking off, very much like conventional UFOs. So if they have the ability to blink on and off, then why aren't they masking themselves if they're supposed to be hidden? Why aren't they masking themselves at all? I don't know. I don't even know if we should answer that right now because it's it's a rabbit hole.
Very short. I mean, it just simply is they want to be seen. And why they want to be seen is because it's down to human perception. There's something happening in regarding why they want to be seen, and that's down to the people seeing it. And the effort, now it could be because they push the UFO phenomena, the true phenomenon wants to push the government to say, well, you know what, how are you going to get away with trying to push this under the carpet? You can't. We are going to be so everywhere that it can't be ignored. And they've gone into panic mode, the government. They're just like, oh my God, how are we going to deal with this now? Just try and ignore it because we don't know what else to say. It could simply be that. But you are right, Alexis. If there are foreign adversary, why are they lighting up like a Christmas tree? They wouldn't. All they got to do is switch lights off. We'd never know they're really there, to be honest. And the fact is that some of the light phenomena on these things, from 700 to 7,000 watts of just flaring up. People ask me, how can we ever know now in the 21st century what is ours and what is theirs? And the biggest thing I used to say was, well, the phenomena seems to act slightly differently. It morphs, it shapes, it splits, it comes back together, it materializes, it dematerializes, has a conscious connection. Does our craft do that? The specialized technology that we have, we don't know. Maybe that's the only way to separate these two things because visually it's next to impossible.
Yeah, I think this is a great time to bring in Mr. Jacob Barber, who did, for those of you who have not seen this interview, we can set it up a little bit. I'm sure many of you have. NewsNation, once again, have done an incredible job end to end uncovering this UAP/drone issue, all of the above, and every iteration imaginable. And so, what was this, about two or so weeks ago? Ross Coulthart, who's really been sort of assigned to cover the majority of this sort of story, interviewed Jacob Barber. Jacob is highly decorated, I would dare say, initially in the military and then became a contractor, an independent contractor, dealing with these highly sensitive areas and retrieval missions. Let's just go ahead. And by the way, we're going to have a link so you can watch the whole thing. I have to say, Ross did an incredible job. There's actually two versions of this interview. The first one is kind of the truncated version. So it's about, I think, like 45 minutes, maybe close to an hour. But there's actually a 3 hour plus version that I definitely encourage you watch, where you really get all of the outtakes and everything that Jacob had to say. But let's start talking about some of this footage here. I'm going to play this first one for you, everyone, and then we'll talk about this on the back end.
A lot of the work we did was on what I call the range, where the US government and its private partners use to test all kinds of things. There is a certain percentage which is extremely sensitive, and that extremely sensitive bit does include what we know is our own man-made advanced technology.
You heard the gist of it, Steve. You heard what he said at the very end, right? That he believed that this was, even as exotic as some of these things seemed, that a lot of it was still our own man-made tech. And this is a point that you emphasized in our last show that we did together.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's a very interesting interview that he talked about. I I've had the opportunity to work as a contractor myself for NATO. And during my time, there were some sensitive things I was involved in. But it is interesting that, that you can have access to sensitive material. And these contractors may be involved in collection of some items which might be unusual in nature. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the phenomena that we're dealing with, but I do have to say what's intriguing is that this particular object he claimed to have seen and maneuvered to another location was egg-shaped. And egg-shaped crafts have been reported since the 1920s. There are many reports in MUFON files and many other files where people have seen egg-shaped craft, uh, and even a landed one, for an example. So it's not unusual to see something of that nature. However, we might say, well, structurally, an egg is very good in regarding pressure and construction for the construction, the shape of it, and it's also aerodynamic to some degree. However, is it something which we might have created, or is it something that is the phenomena? I believe if we were dealing with the phenomena here, that phenomena would have been crowded by military personnel straight away. There would have been military choppers there, Chinooks, to relocate these things. We've seen this time and time again in reports in earlier incidents of the UFO phenomena going to ground. So, with it being loosely secure, the security is pretty loosely around this, and a contractor to be able to pretty much have some involvement in this leads me to believe that it might actually be more our tech.
He said that.
Yeah, and I totally agree with him. That is it, of course, and it is because when this first came out a couple of weeks ago, I did a very interesting thing. I put it out to the world. I said, "Look, guys, what do you think? I would like to hear what your opinions are." And I kind of did a little bit of a statistical survey on what people thought after seeing this. Most of which, people are not. They are. We've got some very clever people out there, and they are not falling for everything anymore. They are very, very cautious now because they're aware that there are psyops. They're aware that people will mislead the general public to gain their own, for their own reasons, publicity, whatever. And also, there's also disinformation out there across the internet as well. So they are aware, they are wising up. And I'm so pleased to see that so many are just not grabbing at this and saying straight away, there's your evidence. But it is very, very interesting then, though.
Yeah. If this were, let's say, for argument's sake, this was 100% man-made. Again, we're talking about the drones and slash UAP and slash potentially NHI craft. The lines have become so blurred, which in and of itself is a phenomenon to me. Luis Elizondo has also been on NewsNation a lot. Ross has interviewed him several times and a couple of really in-depth interviews, and he actually referenced, because remember, Jake referenced the exotics of what he saw that he still believed had a man-made component, at least. And Elizondo has as well. He actually lists 5 UAP what he calls observables that included instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocity, transmedium travel, which I find fascinating, anti-gravity, and low observability. Can't say that for some reason. The transmedium travel and the anti-gravity is very curious to me.
No,
Totally piqued my attention.
absolutely. I mean, the anti-gravity. I mean, there are several methods of anti-gravity that have been used, production, for many years. It's been tested, and even just a simple electrogravitic anti-gravity we can create in our own homes with a few pieces of wood, nail, some metal wire and some high power. We will see it. Now, there are several reasons. There's several methods of this. So anti-gravity is kind of a bit of the old story now. Okay, we must have it. It's been withheld and it's been utilized by the governments. However, it's not in the public domain as yet. However, though, when we start talking about the transmedium capabilities of these craft, Well, I got into this early on, and I thought, do you know what? Why are they missing one out? And I will get to this. I went in there and I started asking questions at the high end, and saying, "Where's the quad? Where's the fourth medium capability?" I'm aware of it. Some of the other researchers around the world are aware of it. This is when you have the phenomena going through solid material, going into volcanoes, into mountains, into the ground, passing through things. They are metaphysical sometimes in nature. So if that is the case, that is a transmedium travel. It's a form of transmediability. So where is it? Why we only got three? And I was told at the top end, we can't tell people about the fourth one yet, because this was at a time when a lot of scientists were offering to come on, give support. And that was a really good thing for the very first time. We got scientists wanting to come forward. But we didn't want to throw this on the laps, because it's a big pill to swallow about the physics that's involved when a craft can simply go straight into the mountainside. And this is what the phenomena seemingly represents. So it's quad medium travel, really. There are things still yet to come. And it's going to be very interesting, because when we start to getting into the real true statistics of the phenomena, and Elizondo's putting little clues out there now to say, kind of say, it's much more involved than what we thought. And he's absolutely right. And many people do know that now at the top end.
Yeah. I had a couple of things I'm going to say. I'm going to hold for now. Let's get to our next clip. The interview with Jake Barber
And
continues.
just visually looking at the object on the ground, you could tell that it was extraordinary and anomalous. It was not human.
I'm going to bring in another clip, because NewsNation was able to obtain some footage of this egg, and then I'm going to backtrack to something else he said. But let's take a look at this real quick, and I want to get your thoughts, particularly based on what you just said, Steve. Look at this. Look at this clip. This is what NewsNation was able to obtain. Reminds me of the Tic Tac a little bit. I mean, it's a little different shape, but I remember what you said
Yeah,
in our last show about the Tic Tac, that you have some intelligence, I believe, that you received that Tic Tac was indeed perhaps man-made high tech.
Oh, yes, and of course it was referenced, even with the Pentagon and in the UAP hearings. That one particular gentleman said that he had a closed meeting with Arrow, and Arrow told him that the Tic Tac is American defense secret technology. Yeah, so I do believe that's the case. I believe we've got some wonderful toys out there, and so we should have. Since we've gone on 70 odd years now since Roswell, so we should have. Because the technology is just plateaued, and we don't see all the new stuff anymore. But it's interesting. It's this particular object is assumed. I say assumed to be UAP, and its color is interesting because it's kind of pale or white, and that would be a very good color to have in the sky, because they're difficult to see most of the time in white and gray skies. So you can see in the footage that this particular object is being carried, it's dropped to the ground, it rolls, it's egg-shaped, absolutely. But when I first saw it, I thought, what are roughly the dimensions of this thing? And it's not so far different than what is referred to as the Delhi sculpture eggs. And if anybody who's watching our show just Googles Delhi sculpture eggs, you'll find them on top of theatres and buildings. And these are about the same size. They are white sculptured eggs. And of course, these things have to be removed. They're on top of buildings. So how did they get there? Well, maybe they are lifted to these particular buildings. So, I'm starting to look at all different areas. You've got to do that. You've got to look at everything, because a contractor that has aircraft that can maneuver and move things, it may not just be being utilized by the military. It might be utilized by many companies for, could you move this for us? I also checked into the background of Jake Barber a little bit, and he also has a transport company, which is for like lorries and things that are moving. So it's all about logistics. So he's not just involved in military, it's about logistics in whole. And of course, a lot of information has also come forward on the tail of all this, because there's information's all over the place at the moment, is about his business and promoting his work and his research and da 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 da. So it gets very problematic, Because one of the first things that you realize in regarding psyops and how things are used is that sometimes there's a reason for things to play out. Why certain times? We just had all this UAP stuff just taking place and still continuing in New Jersey, and then bang, this happened. Very good timing, to be interesting. It's very good timing. I'm not saying it's not authentic. I'm saying it's very coincidence. The coincidence of the timing is remarkable. And the fact that everybody's going to jump on it because they're on the backbone of UAP. And it gets into high locations where it's going to get distributed worldwide. It's very good for him for business, I'll have to say. But, I don't know. It's one of those things, isn't it? Is it secret technology, or is there a more mundane explanation? Or is it actually even representative of the phenomena, which I doubt, because I would have thought that the military would have been all over this thing if that was the case.
I'm trying to think if I want to say anything or not. I might just intimate. You bring up all good points. We're always asking the question, what is the level of authenticity of what we're hearing from whether it's a person or a group of people? Right now, it seems Jake Barber is in the sort of firestorm. Although a lot of people, particularly in our community, have kind of given him a pass, given him in a good way, saying he comes across as highly authentic. I will tell you, without mentioning any names, that I did speak with an individual who does know him, and just recently. And he has said that no surprise, he's getting bombarded right now with requests, etc. I know he knew that would be, happening on the back end of a widely seen and in-depth interview as he did with NewsNation. So yes, I'm sure he knew going in that there would be a lot of demand for more from him. And as far as the other businesses he's in, he's got, I guess he either has or had a transport business, but he also has something that he calls, it's an organization that he's assembled called Skywatcher, which I found very interesting, in which he and a group of other people that were on some of the missions that he was in, and these on the range, which we could speculate where that might be, have come in to examine. Well, I'm really not quite sure what it is they're ultimately trying to accomplish. I know they're trying to get data to sort of underscore the fact that there is some form of a phenomena going on. I'm still not really clear. But here's the thing that I find very interesting. Let's bring the idea of what they call psionics into this, which I haven't heard this term in years. Psionics meaning people that have innate high level of ESP abilities and have been summoned, have been for years by the government to be a part of some of these missions. And apparently some of the people that are working for Skywatcher with him are indeed psionics. There's a whole cavalcade of elements going on here, Steve. It's hard to kind of peel them apart, but give me your thoughts on the whole psionics.
Well,
You know,
I looked into psionics, and it's interesting. I can only draw it from my own comparisons. I mean, I was introduced to the phenomena at an early age. For me, seeing something like what he's seen is just a regular kind of thing for me, because I see a lot of different things, and I'm just doing my normal things. I'm driving or going shopping, or I'm in the back garden looking up at the sky or whatever. Sometimes it's just mundane things, but hey presto, I see things. And the people who are with me also see things. At a point in time, you kind of go, okay, you start to flatten in regarding your emotional response to them. Yeah, of course you do. I mean, I might walk in and say, I've just seen something strange, and I put the kettle on, and that's the end of the discussion. It's lost its, it's so fantastic, you know, but at the same time, your emotions change the more regularly you do. So, how long are these people been in these are the experiences, and how long have they been having these experiences? Because there are people out there which I would say are profound human experiences. They are at a real high level, more so, a lot more than I am, and they are plentiful. They have some type of connection with phenomena, and I will also state that the phenomena has a connection with them because it's
yes.
it's a
Well, that's
combination, joint
right.
thing. Yeah, so
Absolutely.
yes, I totally agree that the governments and secret programs are going to utilize just general people who might have these certain connections to be involved in certain things because they'd be interested, wondering if the phenomena all act differently, or what they might think, or what intel they might be able to gather that we might not get psychologically, but they might get because of the connection they have. So I can completely imagine that happening. The downside of that, though, is that the credibility of the information, there are still people out there are still even saying now that they've listened to some of the teams who works with and got information from them, and somehow they haven't quite tied up together the stories. And people are looking and nitpicking into that area now. And basically because they're just as confused as everybody else. How much of this is true, and are we being misled? They have to really get into the nuts and bolts of this thing, unfortunately. But it's very difficult because we're talking about something that's past tense. It's already happened. There's no evidence, physical evidence of anything, only a video footage, and and a correlation of stories between himself and a number of his team. So it makes a real problematic thing when we have to rely on, should we believe if someone comes forward as a whistleblower to say, I've had this experience, I've done this, and I've been involved in this, and the people I've worked with alongside, they can collaborate it. Well, even if they collaborate it, what level of evidence is this? Because you could get a specialized team together to say, this is what we want to do, this is the collaboration which is required, and this is what we're going to have to get this information out. So it gets very, very difficult. And I understand, when people out there might be saying, well, Steve, how long is a piece of string here? Are you stretching it a bit thin here? Is it not so obvious that it actually is something unusual? It might be. But at the same time, I'm aware from looking into the past of the things that have happened that we have time and time again been stooged by the United States government in regarding the phenomena. And what they tend to do is release very interesting information, which somehow, sometimes is a bigger lie just to cover over the older lie.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's,
True that. Yeah, yeah. Duly noted. Duly noted. I also, I mean, look, I choose to take an observatory role rather tether myself to he's real, he's not, or it's real, it's not, and I will remain that way for the foreseeable future. But one of the things as an observer that piqued a little bit of or raised a little bit of an eyebrow for me, Steve, was when he was talking about Skywatcher, because he did go into a bit of detail about this organization and what they were uh, sort of charged with doing. The fact that they are VC funded, we don't know who the venture capitalists are, and also that they have been hired and are working with, I don't want to misquote, uh, working in subcapacity with the U.S. government, doing something. So there is a governmental sort of tie-in here,
do
and
agree.
that's where I had to raise an eyebrow. I'm sorry, I just,
No, no, no. I totally agree. I think yes, there's some involvement there. He
it may be
mentioned,
perfectly fine, but just I
yeah, well, he made references to certain things which would only be associated, which he would know. I mean, he talks about the range. That's a name known when working in compartmentalization programs or just outside the government as defense contractors or government contractors. They use that word. However, if it was from the inside and the military point of view, it would, on a military base, it would be referred to as the sandbox and things like that. So it's slightly different names that have been used. And that's maybe one giveaway. But I did think it was interesting how he reacted to some of the questions during his interview. And he responded in a certain way that I have experienced other witnesses, people who have come into close proximity to what I believe is associated to the phenomena. So, I don't rely on the hard facts data. Sometimes you've got to take a step back and just look inwards, inner, and rely upon the psychological, the spiritual aspect of this experience, what he's witnessing, what he's involved in. Sometimes you can gain a mountain of material just from that, which is
absolutely.
better than what we're told about all the facts and all the data.
Perfect segue. Let's watch this. There you have it. Yeah. Um, what's to say about that? I would just say, look, if I could just say this one thing, if I were to ever take myself out of an observation mode in order to join a side, is he being authentic or not? This could be the piece that sealed the deal prospectively. Uh, to your point.
So, yeah, I mean, I think you are absolutely right. I mean, it's interesting because with the work I've been involved in for over 40 years now, is about I've stepped into an area of what might be referred to as paranormal mechanics and the connectability and association between paranormal and ufological. And it's there, it's always been there right from the start. However, when I started getting into the research of paranormal phenomena and the experiments, I've been in locations when suddenly I've been overwhelmed and I have no reason, I no idea why, but I've been in floods of tears and absolutely heartbroken in some areas. It's just like the phenomena connects with you, and you that connection, that conscious connection, whatever it is, you feel the emotions associated with the phenomena. Are we dealing with the same thing here? Because it's the same things that are being reported when we have this same connection with the phenomena in regarding UAP. You know, this same type of conscious connection. And there are thousands of connections between the paranormal and ufology. This is just one of them. And I have to say, well, it is exactly the same. It's reported the same. People have those experiences. People have had paranormal encounters or strange occurrences that take place. You just don't know what they mean, including pilots which have had close observations of UAP. Even they have reported very similar things, this type of connection and emotional reaction to their experience.
Let's watch this.
I felt like something was inside of me. I felt like I was possessed by the most beautiful spirit I'd ever been possessed by. And
Was it loving?
it was loving. But there was a sense of sadness at the same time.
Before we go further with this, I want to play something else for you guys. I interviewed a name you might remember from a few years ago. This has to do with the Tic Tac UFO incident, if you will, that was widely reported. A gentleman, a former U.S. Navy operator named Kevin Day. I wanted to get his account end to end, not just his what he witnessed and what he thought about it, but some of the other more nuanced parts of his story. So let me just, before we get too far, I want to play this for you as well. Listen to this.
And put two and two together on this whole UFO thing. And I was living in the wilderness, man. I was homeless. I didn't have no money left. I was pretty much rudderless. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do, and I didn't relate any of these things back to this situation. And a funny thing happened when we were back out in the mountains. My cousin was back there with me, and for some unknown reason, I started saying thank you to God. And I've never been a really religious person. I don't have a religion. But for some reason, I started telling God thank you, and I really mean it when I say it, It's from my heart.
I know you do. Oh, my gosh.
And when that happened, my life started to change. You can tell I get emotional about this because it's so real to me,
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
It's very difficult to refute some form of authenticity when you see two grown men coming from such a
Yeah.
visceral, hardened government background, being reduced to tears.
Well, yeah, we do have a lot of people have had experiences, but later on afterwards, it's like they slightly are changed. They seem to have a slightly different view on life spiritually, or a new zest for something, or for zest for change. It can impact them, and many people have had experiences like that, both in the paranormal and ufological. And it is interesting because I like to hear about those sorts of things, those psychological things that may have changed them, their aspects, their views on life, the spiritualism. People have completely changed after having these experiences. It might not happen immediately, but people have changed. And they're not the same people that they were when they first witnessed these things.
So we've gone pretty much from one end of the spectrum to another. We've been sort of parsing out the elements that could make an otherwise exotic technology, perhaps man-made, to a phenomena that can clearly bring two grown men, figuratively speaking, to their knees. At some point, we've got to draw a line of demarcation. I can't imagine. I don't care how exotic the man-made technology is, could bring two grown men to their knees in tears in that connection. Where do we separate here? Or
Well, do you know what? Let's look at some of the psychological tests that took place in 1984 by a number of societies. We've also been involved at the SCP regarding what we might refer to as controlled psychological tests. And we have had people that believe they've had these experiences and have this type of reaction, when in fact the experience was manufactured. If the experience wasn't authentic, it wasn't an original experience, it was manufactured. They thought it was, and they thought they'd had a real experience, a very powerful experience. And you will see them reduced to tears and believed to a point of change in their life, until obviously they realize that's it's part of a social experiment. And we have to do these blind social experiments to gain proper data, because we can't tell them prior before, because we won't get proper data. It is interesting that how the body can react in regarding these experiences. But then there are also people which do have, because I've had them myself, I've had euphoric experiences, and I can't explain them. But then on the other side of the coin, I've had those that, wow, I wouldn't want to have that experience again. So, it swings and roundabouts. There's two tails of this, you see. So, but I do believe that people can have these experiences and can have some type of spiritual awakening. We hear about it all over the world. Spiritual awakenings, because the initiation process, the initiation by reaction from phenomena. There's biblical stories about this in the Vatican archives, in the Bibles, about spiritual awakening. And all of a sudden, it might be under the heading of religious connotation, but it is a spiritual awakening from having some type of encounter, experience, even thousands of years ago. It's still going on today, and I'm sure that it will be impacting for anybody to have some type of profound experience like that. In regarding the drones, well, you are right. We are cut down in the middle. There is this great confusing area. I've witnessed the drones myself. I've filmed the drones myself. And I don't know what they are. I've no explanation for them. But I cannot get away from, and I said this to you, didn't I, that from witnessing UFOs from a child, there's a certain feeling that comes with it. And you will know what I mean about this, won't you? There is a certain feeling. When you look into the sky and you see something which is quite unusual, and you've just got nothing, no connection, no feeling, nothing. It's flat inside. You feel it's got to be something which is our technology. Because there are times when you feel the experience and you kind of know, yeah, that's something unusual. For me, that's a big giveaway. And I trust that some people out there may have those type of experiences and know, not just in your eyes and ears, but know from within, that feeling. It's like the taste of a lemon. You never forget it, and you think, yes, it's that returning sensation that I can guarantee that, yes, this is something unusual, a profound experience.
right, but that's what Jake so much has said
Yeah,
himself.
well, that means that he may have had an experience with what is referred to as the phenomena. He may have. The problem is that we've got two sides of the story. We've got people that say, well, it could be this, that, and the other, or it could be the phenomenon itself. But what people got to understand is that if he has this induction of this spiritual connection with the phenomena, and you feel it inside that connection, then there is a possibility he could be talking about experiencing the phenomena, and he actually been involved in transportating it, from a pickup or a pick site, as he refers to it.
I'm sure. I don't know the years. It sounds like this was in the 90s that a lot of these transports took place, insofar as this particular gig he had as an independent contractor. But I have to imagine, Steve, I mean, not everything was of that magnitude as, quote unquote, the egg, but I have to imagine that there were probably similar uh, uh, phenomenological objects, that he also transported. I can't say for sure, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. So there's still a lot. There's an X factor here. There's still a lot he hasn't shared, nor should he, because he's still look. And here's the other thing we didn't even touch on. Maybe we can pick up in the next episode the physiological effects and the fact that he and his team all got sick.
Yes. That I'm aware of. I've had that experience myself, actually, in coming to close proximity to the phenomena. It can act that way sometimes, and it kind of adversely affect you. Yes, that's true, and that's very interesting. And it not only affects you sometimes in a physiological manner, but certainly psychological
Right.
as to this.
But yeah.
What's referred to as being burned by the object, not in the physical sense, but it leaves an impression on you.
But he spoke of very profound physiological effects, including losing all of his hair, having essentially, I think it's alopecia.
Well,
I mean, he has no eyebrows, no hair now. He said skin was peeling, and as a matter of fact, and I know you know this name, Gary Nolan, who has been working very closely with him on this aspect, and some others. In fact, I think Gary has somehow been advising in some capacity for his Skywatcher. That's aside, but these physiological effects, he's insinuating that there was a radiation situation here. He was exposed to some pretty heavy radiation,
it's very possible.
and his team.
Yeah, it's very possible. I mean, there's many stories associated to these craft in association to radiation. We're even seeing it even now, in cases we're dealing with this year, where there's radiation in association to activity of phenomena. And we have to say, well, why is there radiation that's involved? And it's not something new. It's gone back a long, long time into early reports from the 1950s onwards. That radiation was a significant issue in regarding these sightings. And there's actually government reports and documents about procedures how to deal in regarding the UAP or UFO phenomena and its associated radiation. So if the people will go to that great length to provide government documents to officials secretively in specialized meetings about how to deal with the UFO phenomena and the problem of radiation or biological chemical hazards, then there's definitely got to be something to it.
Absolutely. Well, look, this has been quite a premiere episode of UAP and beyond. Everyone, I hope you've enjoyed it. We should have said this at the very top of the episode because this is no small thing. We must hear from you. As a matter of fact, Steve, here's an idea. I want to put it out to the audience at the same time. I'd love to hear, like literally hear from people. And even though we are recording these episodes, we may do some live streams on occasion. But for the foreseeable future, we're going to do recordings. But we may set something up, guys, where you can actually leave us a voicemail and where we can, with your question or your comment, it's not just about your question because we don't have all the answers. You may have some insights that we don't. So we're stand by on that. We're going to try to figure out a way, Steve, to set that up so people can leave their direct messages that we can play on the show.
Absolutely.
Because there's a lot. We all have to have this conversation. Everybody.
Yeah, there'll be so many people out there that will see various different things in regarding this talk that we've had, and that will be that they've had personal experiences, might want to share them because it's always good to share experience because this is how we learn, this is how we advance the subject and move forward. Also, there will be people out there that maybe are seeing drones still, believe it or not, but they are still being seen. We'd love to hear from people that are seeing these things because the variety is tremendous, and it's absolutely fascinating because it's so in your face at the moment, it cannot be ignored. So yeah,
absolutely
critical to gather as much information as can. We'd love to hear from people.
Yeah. If you saw the trailer, I'll never forget. I said, this is your conversation too. And we really mean that. Matter of fact, speaking of the drones, particularly if you've had your own sighting of drones in the recent past weeks or a month or so, have you had any physiological, anything, even psychological, emotional reactions? Now that I haven't heard yet, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised, Steve, if there's somebody out there that might be able to share something like that. That might, we're on a fact finding mission, so
Certainly,
yeah,
I agree. So yeah, there's certainly some people that might have those experiences because I do
yeah,
believe that if you were to ask my opinion, we're not only seeing some of our stuff up there, but we're also seeing the phenomena, and that can interact with us. So, I do believe people may have some of those experiences to talk about.
Got a lot to talk about. 2025 is going to be a heck of a year when it comes to
Well,
this
that's it.
and other things.
We're thrown straight on the back end of December's invasion, throughout the sky, straight into January of 2025, and the return of these things, which are seemingly returning to locations. Still no answers, but isn't it going to be a very interesting year? The most interesting
Indeed.
is the fact that people are getting fed up. They want the answers. They want to know what's going on. And we've just got to keep pressing until we start to get those answers.
And that's one of the reasons why we're here, guys. Listen, we are gonna go to the Patreon after show. Were you thinking about that? We're gonna do that. We don't know if we're gonna do this all the way through to the to for every episode of UAP and beyond. This is, by the way, something that is we're showing up on Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks. We will come back next week with a regular episode of Higher Journeys, but we'll be doing this. We'll see how the information flows and goes, and we will show up when we got more to share. And I have a feeling it may be sooner than we had planned. But for this episode, we are going to do an after show. Here's what we're going to talk about, Steve. You and I chatted about this offline. Let's get a little bit more into the psionics as it relates to CE5. Familiar with that term, guys? CE5. This is Stephen Greer's protocol. Of course, it's argued that he was not the originator of this. There are other similar human-initiated contact protocols, but CE5, of course, is very well known. But obviously, this comes up when it comes to this idea of psionics and to what extent the government and certain military operations may have procured those psionic individuals to participate in these programs. So there's a lot of dot connecting. So we're going to have a short conversation over there. Come on over to Patreon. It helps to support the show, of course, and you get a lot of great perks, including the after show that we're about to do. So Steve, my wonderful co-host, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
It's been great. All right, guys, we're out for now. We're going to go next door. You know how it works. We're going to go next door. Let's talk about psionics and CE5. All right. Thanks, everyone. We will see you soon. Take care.